Hey, Algebra 1. Today we're going to do quadratic equations. Now, this section is the most straightforward section like ever. It's just straight, literally one equation. But the equation's really long. It's not actually long, but it looks really complicated. But once we do one or two, you'll see it's very straightforward. But the equation is this, and I recommend writing it down. I will say this first before I write it down. You're not going to be forced to remember this. I'll give you this on the test, on a test that comes up if we have a test. And if you do have it, you are not going to be forced to. You're not going to be forced to remember, but it's something that it's kind of memorable for some reason. Like a lot of people always remember the quadratic equation. But the quadratic equation is this, and don't be scared by how it looks. It's much nicer than it looks. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Now you look at that and you'll be like, Mr. Tobel, I'm scared. But it's okay. You don't have to be scared because it's very straightforward. Now let me go through the steps. We're going to use this equation and use the steps. First off, we're given some numbers. Let me pick some up. I'm looking at something. 2x squared minus 7, let's say equal x. Step 1 is to set it equal to 0. So to set it equal to 0, probably the easiest thing is just to move the x over here. So minus x minus x. They don't combine with any of the like terms. So it's going to be 2x squared minus x minus 7 equals 0. Next step, identify your a, b, and c. Old skill, but it's not too hard. A is always the number in front of the x squared, so that's 2. B is always the number in front of the x, which is negative 1. And c is always the number by itself, which is negative 7. So we identified a, b, and c. Step 3, take a, b, and c and plug it into the equation over here. So we're going to take a, b, and c, and let me, I guess, rewrite it here. So that's 2, negative 1, and negative 7. And we're going to plug it into this equation over here. So every time I see a b, I should plug in my b. Every time I see a, I should plug in my a. So it is going to be negative, put parentheses, negative 1, plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4, and I realize it's not on the camera, 4 times a, which was 2, times c, which was negative 7, all divided by 2 times the a, which is which was 2 also. Okay? So you look at this and you're like a little scared. But basically, what always happens is this front one is just negative. So that's just going to be double negative. That's a positive 1 happens to be. And this number under here is just going to be a simple multiplication. In this case, 2 times 2, so that's 4. So the only math you're actually doing is basically inside the square root here. So it's not that scary as it looks. So I'll do the math over here so I have some space. So negative 1 squared is just positive 1 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 7 is negative 56. Yeah, negative 56. Well, 1 minus negative 56, that's the same thing as 1 plus 56. So that should be 57. So inside that square root should be square root of 57. Now, is square root of 57 a clean number? No. Because it's not a clean number, we're done. We can't really make it simplified anymore unless we change it to decimal. I don't need you to do that. You could leave it like this. I'm going to do one more where the number is clean and see what we're going to do there. All right, so I made one that's going to have a clean answer, and we're going to deal with that. 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. So why don't we solve this out? We're using the quadratic equation. So I have to be specific on what instructions I want you to use. So we're going to use the quadratic equation. And the quadratic equation, just remember, no, you don't actually have to remember, but b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, set it equal to 0. Hey, it's already equal to 0. How convenient. I forgot to put the equal 0. My fault. Step 2 is identify a, b, and c. So a is 2, b is 5, c is 3. Step 3 is to plug it into the equation over here. So we got negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3 all over 2 times a, which is also 2. Now we're going to simplify as much as possible. So negative 5 is still negative 5. 2 times 2 on the bottom is 4. Inside the square root, let's do it over here so we have some space. So 5 squared is 25. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 8, 16, 24. 25 minus 24 is 1. So that's the square root of 1. Wait a second. The square root of 1 is an actual number, or a whole number, I should say, not an actual number. The square root of 1 is 1. So I can rewrite this part right here as negative 5 plus or minus 1 over 4. So now we're dealing with actual numbers. We can do the plus and minus in actuality. If it was an unclean one, like God forbid it was 2, let's say, then you would stop right there. But because we can actually have clean numbers, we're going to do it. So 1 up here, 1 down here. Negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4 over 4, which reduces to negative 1. So one of my answers is negative 1. And I'm going to do negative 5 minus 1. So I did negative 5 plus 1. I'm going to do negative 5 minus 1. So negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6 over 4. So that's negative 3 halves. Okay? So your answers are negative 1 and negative 3 halves. You could also write that as negative 1.5 if you want, or negative 1.5. I don't really care how you write it. But all those are acceptable ways to write that. So negative 1 and negative 3 halves are your answers. So sometimes when it's clean, it actually gives us more work. So you kind of actually want it to be not a clean square root. But regardless, that's the lesson. Essentially, it's very straightforward. Whether it's easy or not, it's up to you, but it's very straightforward. It's an equation, you plug it into the equation. That's all you have to do. All right? We'll have Zoom today, and hopefully I have your test graded by the time our Zoom starts. Have a wonderful day.